well enough to understand what tackle is, and every year I've enjoyed it. Every
Now Fiddler puts on the step, goes right through, puts on the step again. Oh, goes Freddy. That was magnificent stuff. Well, they shall not weary them. Parcels gets away, Parcels still going. Mullins opens up again. Oh, look at him go. He beats O'Davis on the outside.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of The Voluntary Tackle, the only NRL podcast now selling Anthony Seibold branded razor blades. I'm your host Damon Brown, and today on the show we'll be discussing all of the hot topics in the wonderful world of rugby league, including possible merger ideas, the latest on Kieran Foran's contract drama, SBW's NRL return preparation, the Broncos' wooden spoon commitment, and a whole bunch more. But first, I am joined in the notorious Media Watch Mario studios by the only man who is so anti-Souths, he once bought up a huge chunk of land in Alexandria just so he could turn it into a massive pig manure factory. It's Xander Risotto. Welcome to the show, mate.
Good to be here, mate, and might I just say that nobody noticed that I turned it into a pig manure factory. It just blended right in with the surroundings.
It's a bit of a shithole anyway, isn't it, Alexandria? It's always under fucking construction whenever I'm there.
Permanently.
I think it's just home to lollipop men.
The pig manure factory actually looked better than all of those bungalows that they're building out there.
Where did you get all the pig shit from, by the way? Was it between Ray Hadley's ears or...?
No, Russell Crowe's place.
Oh, okay, yes, of course. Because I think a lot of that is piled up alongside all of those B-grade scripts. Here's a little thing I will say about Russell Crowe. We give him a lot of shit here, sometimes pig shit, on the show. But he's actually a genuinely good thespian, I'd argue, Xander. Do you agree with that?
No, I think he's an overrated thespian. Okay. Don't like his movies, they're all shit. I think that Gladiator is an overrated mess. Very historically inaccurate. Cinderella Man, he apparently filmed his training regime and showed it to Souths to try and fire them up ahead of a final series.
That hurts, doesn't it?
Look at me training for a movie before you go out into battle against 112-kilo behemoths.
I love it. Well, judging by the way half of their forwards play, I think he's shown them the movie Proof with a very blind Hugo Weaving. I think that the way their handling has been, that's a very obscure Australian film joke, but I threw that in anyway. Now, we should mention we are recording on Sunday, August the 2nd. That's only one day, Xander, after the horse's birthday. So many happy returns to all of the equine brothers and sisters out there, especially you, Camilla Parker Bowles. I hope this day brings you a banquet of hay and toffee apples, you long-faced snob. Now, before we dummy to nobody and get absolutely smashed by Francis Melly, you can just a reminder you can follow The Voluntary Tackle on all of the socials via the handle @VoluntaryTackle. You can also follow Xander Risotto on Twitter on the handle @Xander_TVT. Now, it's also Indigenous round this week, mates. Always a great time of year. The jerseys are always a favourite part of the celebration for me, with one possible exception this year. How have you seen it?
As always, there's a kind of a spectrum of them, right, where you see some are really good. I think for me, I thought the Cowboys one was the best.
There's some fantastic ones.
Some really good designs.
Yeah.
I thought the Panthers one was probably a little bit lighter on, but I still liked what they did. It just kept a little bit closer to I guess, their original design.
Yeah,
I liked ours. I would like to see them do more with our V at some point. You know, I know they like to keep the V intact, but I'd like them to
incorporate that. Somehow.
to maybe at least convert that to some sort of Aboriginal art. I actually thought the Storm one was really good.
But let's get to the one here that all of Australia is now looking at as potentially being not the best effort. And it's the Green Machine Canberra Raiders, which looks unusually normal, or as per program, if you're not looking closely. Well, how did you see that?
Yeah, well, again, it was one of those ones where, like when they do retro round and you see some teams, because their jersey hasn't really changed in 100 years, you just don't really notice what they're doing for retro round.
Yep.
It was a little like that. They had to zoom in on the players to really work out what they'd done.
Yeah.
Because it was just the sleeves. And I think everyone kind of thought, oh, well, that's a bit average. But as we all know, even the players didn't really think it was that great with Whiten coming out being fairly open in his criticism of it, calling it lazy.
Yeah, you've actually got a bit of a statement there from Jack, because I think he's come out lambasting the design, and then he's also apologised, I think, because I think the artist was a bit offended because she designed that sleeve to the best of her efforts. I think, honestly, I don't think the criticism was necessarily directed about the design, though. I think it was about the lack of prominence of Indigenous art on the jersey.
Yeah, so what he said was he's very, very proud, but a little bit disappointed of how the club went about the jersey. He said he feels like they just ticked a box. No one got any input.
Is that normally how it works? Do they normally consult the players, the Indigenous players in the team? That would seem like a logical thing to do,
I know that they do, obviously. I think most clubs do that. I remember actually seeing an interview with Latrell Mitchell last year when they talked about the Roosters one and how they brought him into that process. And I know that they did that at South this year with him and Walker and the other Indigenous boys in the South squad for their design. So I think that's ideally what you want to do. There's a lot of Indigenous stars in the game. You want to incorporate them. Given they all represent different nations, you want to incorporate those identities. So yeah, I guess Whiten's the only Indigenous player they have at the Raiders. Maybe they didn't really think about it. I don't know.
Maybe that's what they've done with the ratio of the jersey. They've gone, well, it's only one Indigenous player out of a squad of 30, so we'll give you a 30th of the jersey.
The Batuta Advocate had a fair stab at this, where they said the Raiders Indigenous jersey criticised for placing more emphasis on Canberra's Chinese culture.
This is a hint at the Huawei branding, I assume.
It's still front and centre, and you have to wonder if maybe that came into it. Maybe the contract with Huawei was such that you can't do anything to take away from the Huawei logo on the front of the jersey, and it takes up more of the jersey than most sponsor logos.
Or maybe it had Indigenous art on it to begin with, but the jersey spent too much time near 5G networks, and it ended up being disintegrated.
The radio waves just moved it out of the visible spectrum somehow.
But do you think Jack Whiten had a point here? Should he have had to apologise? Because he's apologised now because I think it was a bad look for the club. That he's offended the Indigenous artist who did the sleeves. In your opinion, do you think that was the right thing to do, or was he completely justified in having a go and calling it lazy?
I think he was justified, and I think he should have apologised. We'll put it that way, for the simple fact that he was he came across as if he was really having a crack at the artist, and he didn't mean to do that. So I thought that his apology was a clarification more than a straight out apology. He says he stands by his position, and that he doesn't want to direct any criticism at the artist, because we don't really know the design process. The artist could have designed this to take over the whole jersey and for it to be front and centre.
Yeah,
but
they just Ricky Stewart, he said.
Yeah,
just whack that on
put it on the sleeves.
Yeah, or even better yet, on the little tab that says only wash in warm water. Put the Indigenous thing there, so we've got the Canberra Huawei branding. Could have been Ricky. I'm not impugning Ricky here, by the way. I'm sure he's not racist. But look, on the Indigenous round, it's a lot of positive stuff out there, Xander. It was a great article, actually, from Jake Duke. I'm not sure if you saw that one. He wrote for 9 News this week about how the Indigenous concept has sort of evolved over time, and the meaning has become a little bit deeper, a little bit less token than maybe it might have been 4 or 5 years ago. And I think testament to that has been... There's been a lot more storytelling, I guess, this year that I've noticed from the likes of Latrell and JT, the Fox. They're all sort of telling their own stories about what culture means to them and how it gets pushed through the prism of the sport. I think that's been pretty positive. How have you seen that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're right. It feels as if it's definitely more significant, probably on the back of all of the political activity around the world with Black Lives Matter and everything. It's taken an additional level of prominence, and I think they've handled it really well. I actually think this is one of those things that the NRL, even from the get-go when they first introduced this concept, and you've got the Indigenous All-Stars as well, they probably, I think they honour the Indigenous stars of the sport better than any other code in the country.
Well, the AFL do a good job, especially with Adam Goods.
Yeah, the AFL.
Do you remember when he dared to do an Indigenous dance in Indigenous round and everyone went ape shit? That was funny.
The problem with the AFL is that they've got too many rusted on fucking neo-Nazis in that sport, like Sam
Big
Newman.
shout out to Eddie McGuire.
Who just bristle at the idea of any. Like, I mean, I remember seeing some AFL dickhead complain that, well, why don't we have a round that celebrates us, like, a white Australian culture? And you're like, that's every week, you dickhead.
Yeah,
like, they just don't get it.
And also, I'm a little bit puzzled as to what that would look like. Would it be just like 13 guys dressed as Ned Kelly? I mean, is it bush rangers?
Like,
what are we doing?
They forget that we're the dominant culture. Like all the jerseys that we have normally designed, that is our culture.
Have you seen the Canberra Raiders jersey?
And I'm just like, but you know, I mean, there are always going to be people who miss the point like that. But luckily, you know, apart from outlier mentally retarded morons like Mark Latham
and Eddie Maguire. Big shout out to Eddie Maguire.
You know, in the NRL, we don't have too many of those. People get it, I think, better.
Mate, do you think we'll ever have an Ireland round? Just to commemorate
Polynesian
people from Ireland.
From the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah, that place. Yeah. Do you think we'll ever have a round dedicated purely to them?
Why? We're just like... is there a massive stock of people of Irish descent that I'm not aware of?
Well, it's not
really.
Really.
Is it for Adam O'Brien?
It's to maybe,
you know, I don't know.
Could dedicate the whole round to former Newcastle winger Brian Carney. I think that'd be pretty good. We could build, you know, nonsensical inventions like the flammable fire extinguisher or the igloo with the 4-piece corner couch, you know, and just say, we love you, Ireland, and Brian.
As somebody with Irish descent, I take exception to that. I think you're missing the point of Black Lives Matter.
I probably am, mate.
Even though Irish people are as white as they get.
Yeah, they're extremely white, unless you're Colin Farrell.
Well, yeah, there are two. There is a concept of known as Black Irish.
Okay, well, see, the voluntary tackle always breaks new ground. Black Irish, didn't think that was a phrase that was going to come up on today's show. Here's my final idea, Willie Peters round. We can just celebrate a completely average bloke. Everybody could just drink tinnies and throw passes to no one. Mate, we're going to push on into the show and we're going to start the program by chatting about Australia's most high-profile masochists. That's right, we're talking about the Brisbane Broncos. They probably played their best game on Friday night, Xander, but still managed to lose to a Sharks team that was so devoid of first-grade talent, they debuted several players and pulled the Hammerhead Shark mascot into the top 17. Thankfully, a poo-laden Scott Morrison filled in as the mascot on the night. Big shout-out to ScoMo, who was in the Engadine Maccas as it happens. The question we're asking on the show today is, have the Broncos forgotten how to win, Xander?
There's a lack of maturity in that side. They don't have a lot of older players who can really steady the ship for them.
And the old players they have are shit. Big shout out to Darius Boyd.
Big shout out to Benteo. Yeah, they don't. They obviously don't have that reservoir of senior players that they can draw on, who will help them when the going gets tough at the back end of a close game.
But, you know, Seabold got rid of a lot of those guys.
He did.
That was the problem, right?
That's right. So who was it they let go?
McCulloch.
McCulloch
they pissed off.
to the Tigers.
He went to the Knights, actually, didn't he?
Oh, that's right. He did too,
before getting a season-ending injury.
Yeah, they had two of them last week. That's right.
Yeah.
McCulloch and...
so they pushed out a whole bunch of players over the last, 12 months. And you're right, now they're left with sort of baby Broncos who can't handle it when the going gets tough. And it definitely showed in that last game against the Sharks because they were finally leading, playing, by the way, pretty good standard match, I thought. I didn't have high expectations for this match.
It was entertaining as hell.
Yeah, entertaining. I thought the Sharks played quite well as well. But they scored 3 tries in the last 10 minutes, Cronulla. I mean, they
were cracking tries, though. Like that
Great
first
tries.
one down the sideline with a kickback and,
But when you're that desperate for a victory, you'd think Brisbane would hold you out for 10 minutes and not leak 3 tries.
You'd think so, but no.
Is it a mentality thing, though? Do you think because of the pressure and the fact that the team has performed so poorly this year, that even in games where they finally conjure up a good energy and they play well, they execute, that they still manage to, snatch defeat from the jaws of victory?
Yeah, you could see it in their body language in defence. When they conceded that first try, they started really freaking out. Like, that was just a brilliant piece of football.
Yeah,
right. And then when it got within 10 points, they seemed terrified of making a mistake so much so...
They were visibly shaking.
Yeah, so much so that they were backing off and giving the Sharks more space because they didn't want to concede a line break. And they ended up basically just giving them so much space that they just let them march down the field.
That's right. They were running 80-metre sets.
So they just, and I remember seeing the Raiders do this a couple of years ago when they were losing those, the famous Canberra Faders, where they were losing games in the last 2 minutes of games like every other week.
I love that year. That was fun.
But
I love those Ricky Stewart presses after too.
He was so fuming.
He was 4% more angry than the previous week.
Like they were brilliant for 78 minutes of each game, and then they would somehow lose it. The Warriors game down in Canberra was still my favourite, where they conceded 2 tries in 2 minutes and lost the game by 2 points. But anyway, but that was the same sort of thing where you see a team who don't know how to respond when the pressure is put back on them, and it's the championship minutes. They should really be rallying, and they need an old head to get them calm, but then focused on putting on as much pressure as possible and ensuring that they first of all, they don't give their opponents space, but they also ensure that they have intensity in what they're doing, and they don't do that.
Well, it's interesting you say they need an old head, because also in the last week, Anthony Seibold confirmed that they are interested in securing the signature of one Cameron Smith to do a final one-year swan song for that very notion that you just put forward, Xander, that he wanted someone who would be a real change agent in terms of the culture at the club. Now, to me, it seems unlikely that will happen, but just let's play the thought experiment here. If they did manage to snag the signature of Cameron Smith, would that be a good move for the club, and would it be successful?
It would be monumental for them. Like, absolutely. I mean, he won't be able to go in and fix the mess that they're in completely, but if he was to go in there and stay there, and sort of come on, because he's the kind of guy, as much as I dislike him, he's clearly a very bright footballing player. He's got a very good football brain. Yeah, he would come in and he would help the coaching get better as well. Yeah, like the same way.
Would it be like Cameron Smith coaching Seibold?
Yes,
wouldn't it?
Probably. If he were to go there, he would do what Cronk did for us. He would give the team maturity in those championship minutes, and he would steady their game management. They wouldn't be in those positions. They would finish their sets better, because he's another kicking option. He's actually got quite a good kicking game.
Yeah.
And then when they go into the culture stuff, sort of between the rounds, he would improve the quality of the training, improve the quality of the efforts of other players, and just up the professionalism across the board. He'd be a huge signing for them.
And a big thing about Cameron Smith as well is I believe he actually has a fairly significant influence over selection down in Melbourne. I think he and Craig sort of talk about that together. I would imagine if you went to Brisbane in 2021, the first thing he'd say is, "Look, Anthony, the fuck's Darius Boyd still doing here?"
Well, that's a fair point, right? Like they have gotten rid of, Smith gets attitude in the same way that Bellamy does. They pick players who have like the right character that they're after there.
Yeah, the culture fit.
Yeah, which was why it was always funny. I remember you made the comment last year when they let go of Brodie Croft. You said, you wondered if there was a whale in the bail on that one, because it's unusual for them to just happily let go what seemed to be a promising half. And since he's come to Brisbane, we've kind of seen he does lack that mental toughness, doesn't he?
He certainly does, especially when he started crying in the first 20 minutes last week. Bawling his eyes out. I felt like someone had stolen his lunchbox. It was fucking weird.
Yeah.
So you're right. That's probably not a great sign from a first-grade footballer. Although, show your emotions, guys. It's 2020. Let it all hang loose, I say. But Xander, I have an interesting question for you about Brisbane here. Is it more disheartening to lose a game like they did against Cronulla, where they actually played well, than to lose and get thumped like they have been? In a weird way, is it actually more demoralising?
I actually don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think for the fans it's painful. For the club it's extremely frustrating. But at least they were in that game. It shows that they're getting closer. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they're playing the Sharks, who've been, to be fair, the Sharks keep bloody winning games. They're, fifth now or something, right?
Yeah, it's amazingly. I mean, I keep waiting for them to fall over, but they're now, I think, have they won 4 on the trot?
Yeah, they have those. Sorry, they're 6 behind Canberra.
I mean, that's a hell of an effort for a team that most people, including myself, had completely written off as no chance of being a finals contender. They keep turning up and surprising people, and I have to say, they walked into that game with 2 debutants, a very inexperienced team. They played some amazing razzle-dazzle footy, the Sharks.
Yeah, they did, and
maybe John Morris is better than people think.
Yeah, I like him as a coach, actually, John Morris.
Is it the chiseled jawline?
No, I mean, I actually think I think his presses. He always sounds like somebody who does have a he does have a strong idea of how he wants his team to play.
Yeah,
like he doesn't come up. He doesn't offer too many excuses when they lose and they haven't played well.
Do you know who he reminds me of every time I see him in a media conference? A really attentive personal trainer. He just embodies that entire persona.
He does look chiseled, you're right.
Yeah, I'm expecting him to give Danny Wildler a good eating plan, when he's in those presses. Anyway, that's just my impression. But John Morris, I think he's a fair coach.
Yeah, no, and Sean Johnson, we often say it about him. he can definitely attack. He's got some real razzle dazzle in him in particular.
I mean, you have to hand it to him. He's definitely rolled into a purple patch by Johnson's standards, and if you look at his try assist column, it's off the charts. He's still not running much, but it's still, I guess he's playing a role and it's working for them.
Yeah, his try assist, his passing's been bang on.
And that young halfback who came in, Connor Tracy, he played really well. If I was Chad Townsend, I'd be a little bit worried because I'm like, thanks, Chad. I'm going to just re-aggravate that hamstring on purpose because I think we'll just roll with Connor for a few more weeks.
If he's not there, I don't know if they make that comeback.
Now, as we know, Xander, the Broncos, if they end up with the wooden spoon, the players and staff are allowed to be publicly flogged, tarred and feathered in South Bank as per the directive of Senator Pauline Hanson. The bill was originally intended for black people, but thankfully there's been a revised version to apply just to Brisbane Broncos players. Surely they'll have to avoid that kind of fate, Xander. That's enough incentive alone. They don't want the wooden spoon. The Broncos have never had it, but we know they're one from the bottom. If the Bulldogs had won today and they were very close, Brisbane would have been coming flat last. Are they a chance for the spoon?
They're definitely a chance for the spoon. They've lost to pretty well everybody at this point, right? So.
Yeah, they lost to the over 80s women's auxiliary balloon corps team, didn't they, earlier in the year?
They've got a pretty rough next 5 games. So they've got Souths, the Raiders. They have St George, who you'd have to say St George are going to play, are in better form than them. And then they play the Roosters and Penrith. They're definitely a chance at the spoon.
That's not the easiest run, is it? Especially those last two.
The Bulldogs, who are below them, don't have the easiest run either. So they have the Storm, the Tigers, the Warriors, the Raiders, and the Titans. But it's a slightly easier one, probably, than Broncos. So they're a chance of coming last, you'd have to say.
I actually think that at least their performance improved. But there's also a bunch of teams down the bottom whose performance is improving. But the Bulldogs being one of them. So
Bulldogs should have beaten the
Eels
today.
Yeah.
I thought. I still can't believe. Was it Tolman who decided to just bolt? And
do a quick tap.
Yeah, do a quick
Tolman
tap.
never bolts, mate. Let's be really clear about that.
I think it was Tolman.
He gets up to a steady waltz. He can maybe canter, but he definitely never bolts.
Yeah, look at the image. I've just got this up for you because it is just hilarious. You can
it's a non-visual medium, the podcast.
I know.
You realise that.
I know. This is for your benefit.
Okay, fair enough.
But just have a look at the picture. It just tells you everything you need to know.
Oh, wow.
You can see them signalling to go the 2.
Exactly.
He's taken the quick tap.
Do you know what I love about that? Tolman is struggling to get the ball down to his feet because he lacks that agility.
He's not the most agile man.
He's got lower back issues. I think he slipped a disc doing that quick tap. So not all things going the Bulldogs' way, but they definitely are improving. Xander, look, to wrap up on this whole Brisbane Broncos saga, I will say this. There is a very brief and small shining light for the Broncos, and that's Katoni Staggs. I thought he's added a hell of a lot of energy, and we've talked about this off mic. He's definitely eligible for the Blues, isn't he? Because that's all. Every time I see him score, I just think, you beauty, that's going to be great in a sky blue.
So he could play for either. He's one of those ones that could
jump ship like a Luke Keary.
Yeah. Because he grew up in New South Wales until he was 16. I think then the Cowboys signed him on like a developmental contract, and then he got a proper contract with the Broncos.
But he's declared, just to be clear to our listeners, Katoni Staggs has declared his allegiance to the New South Wales Blues.
That's correct.
I mean, he wants to be on a winning wagon, doesn't he? I worry that we are falling, or at least when I say we, it's probably me, falling into the old chestnut trap here of Queensland look dead and buried. And if you look at the teams, I know we've won the last 2, and it looks like the weight of talent is only going in one direction, which is south of the border at the moment. It's the opposite of COVID. But are we being too cocky when it comes to Origin? I know it's a long way away, but for me, I'm in my head, I'm going, really looking forward to this series because we should smash them.
Well, I mean, Queensland is still going to be competitive. They still have a solid forward pack, and they still have a decent spine, right? When you think of it, Munster and Cherry Evans are not a bad halves pairing.
Yeah, Ponga at the back. And what have you got? Ben Hunt at 9, or no? It might be young Harry Grant.
Yeah, it's probably Harry Grant. At 9, they're really well served.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a very good spine.
So they've got it. They've got a very good spine.
But Dylan Napa at centre. I mean, that's got to backfire on you.
But yeah, I think out wide.
Tim Glasby on the wing.
Yeah,
fuck that.
We're definitely the Blues at the moment. You'd have to say it's Keary and Cleary 6 and 7, and Munster and DC are good, but Cleary just showed the other night he's just another level at 7 at the moment. So those two, it perfectly balances the Blues attacking game, because one thing that we lack at the Roosters is a half with a really big boot. Cleary has a big boot, and then you've got the instinctive kind of genius of Keary at 6.
Yep. Very different styles of player.
Yeah, and then pace to burn out back. You've got Tedesco at the back, and we're likely to have Turbo's got to be on one wing.
So long as his hammies are there.
Yeah, if they're still all right, and if it's not him, it's likely Ferguson, who's still trialist, but he's still playing bloody good footy.
He's got as many tries this year as hair follicles on his head. A big fat fucking duck egg.
But you watch him play, like he's still a huge part of that team. Like, he gets them out of trouble like nothing else.
Yeah,
he
maybe he should push into the forwards.
I mean, he's not trialist for the same reason Ryan Hall is trialist. We'll put it that way.
Well, I've already told you never mention that fucking name on this podcast again. I've actually stopped and thought about it. Ryan Hall is definitely the worst I've ever seen.
Because
let's not go into it. It's just going to hurt me, mate. I don't want to go into it now.
I guess for our listeners, we watched him. We went to a game for the first time this year to watch the Roosters play the Titans, and we sat there. And one of the things about watching the game on TV is because of the focus on the ruck, you don't really get to really spend time looking at specific players and what they're doing in the background. But we watched Hall for, I think, all of the second half.
I was actually obsessed with him. I couldn't stop looking at how shit he was.
And it was fascinating because, I thought he was the one of the trainers for a little while.
Well, can I tell you this?
Because he was just kind of waltzing around.
I've never seen someone blowing a gasket just trying to get on side.
Yeah,
like, he wasn't running with the ball. He didn't go looking for it. And when he finally got thrown the ball, he dropped it.
Do you think they actually do the surgery to fix his ACL? Has he still got it?
Maybe they just went, let's just tell him we have, because we can't afford it.
He's playing like it's still injured.
I think so. He's absolutely... He's obese. Welcome back to the Voluntary Tackle. We're talking Sonny Bill Williams again, Xander, because he's landed in Australia. He's now in quarantine. This is going to be a difficult one, mate, obviously. He hasn't played any footy for 2 months. He wasn't playing a very high standard for a few years. How do the Sydney Roosters get Sonny Bill Williams up to scratch when, at the moment, he's in a hotel with his family? How do you get him prepared for the rigours of the NRL?
He's been out of training for a little while. He's probably going to have to spend a bit of time in conditioning with the club, which I'm sure, just given the systems that Robbo and the coaching staff have in place, they'll manage. They'll get him up to speed pretty quickly. And the way they want to use him, he's not going to be an 80-minute player. They've been explicit about that. Coming on for 20-minute bursts to just inject something into the side, he'll be plenty fit to handle that. He still played footy this year, for Toronto. It's not like he's...
Can you call it footy?
For the Toronto Wolfpack.
He played tag.
He played... Well, I mean... like I said on the show last week, he put in those games. I mean, he had a few more handling errors than you'd like to see from Sonny.
That's because of all the maple syrup on the hands.
Obviously, that's
slippery.
That's law in Canada. All players of all sports have to have maple syrup.
That's right, and on the genitals, which I've never understood.
Apparently, it makes it taste better. Anyway, he did create a lot. He still put a lot of second phase play, as I said last week. It's just that nobody was ever pushing up in support, so it just ended up turning the ball over.
Because they weren't supporting him because they didn't know the rules.
No, well, that's
They're
right.
Canadians. They didn't fucking know what they were doing there. They thought they were on a Kentucky tour.
To be fair, they're not Canadians. They're mostly just off-contract retaring Super League and NRL players.
I hate it when you throw facts in my stories.
Fui Moi Moi was one of their early signings.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. How many games did he play?
I played a couple of seasons with them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and you have to feel for because they joined about the third tier of English rugby league, and that Fui was like 240 kilos and
just retired from the Eels probably.
2 meters tall, running at you, just like fuck.
That is actually, if you actually think about it, that's just an assault, isn't it? That's a criminal act,
more or less, right?
Like that's like bowling over an old lady near the ATM machine and stealing her purse. They're defenceless against poor old.
Basically, I mean, it was the equivalent of that. I would say.
I agree. Now, mate, it must be said, Sonny Bill Williams is doing it pretty tough in quarantine. He's inside a fairly lavish 3-bedroom Sydney apartment. How do you do extras in quarantine? Is it possible to do training inside the hotel room itself?
I'm sure, as you said, it's a 3-bedroom plush suite that he's got. Pretty sure it would fit a treadmill and a weight set.
Yeah, that's right. So you've got to get the gym in there.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, he's probably just bench pressing the kids and his wife.
I think that'd be a little bit too light for him.
Yeah, probably. Well, depends how far he's throwing them.
Probably need a few more family members for him to break a sweat.
Yeah, get a few uncles in there. So they are getting a gym in there, but I don't know. Anything else he could do? What about supplements? Could they stock him up with any kind of extra supplements that might, juice him up and get him ready for round 16?
You're referring to steroids or just vitamins?
Well, we call them vitamins, but no, I'm definitely referring to anabolic steroids.
No, I don't think it's Sonny's. I believe if alcohol is verboten for Muslims, I'm pretty sure steroids would probably be considered verboten as well.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. What if you got like ones that were halal?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like the man shake. I think the man shake's halal, and that's definitely got fucking anabolic steroids in it because Doog swears by it.
Mind you,
in his playing days.
Adam McDougall, I don't know if you've seen him lately. He doesn't look like he's on steroids. It looks a little bit more like he's on mercury. You ever see those old 19th century old-timey cures for things? See Flanagan's arthritic curing tincture, and it includes like mercury and isotope 467 of uranium or something, and just gives you cancer. But because they didn't have like a drug administration of any sort anywhere in the world, they just could say whatever the fuck they wanted.
I think you've brilliantly described the fucking man shake. I'm pretty sure it's got all that, a bit of bone broth, a bit of eye of newt, and a fuckload of whatever that mercury 2137 is.
All of those those shake diets are basically, kind of fasting in disguise, but not actually properly fasting. It just kind of makes you sick.
Look, we have digressed a little bit. I'm going to get back to Sonny Bill Williams really briefly here because James Tedesco came out during the week, Xander, and said he's really looking forward to playing with SBW, namely because he said when he met him once, he had such an aura about him that he went, I would love to have played with him, never thinking that he'd ever had the opportunity. But here comes the opportunity. Here's a frightening combination for you. Teddy's come out and also said, I'm really looking forward to following him around the field, looking for those freaky offloads. How good's that as a potential combination? That's salivating stuff.
Well, that's kind of why when people bag him out about his time at Toronto, you look at some of those games, and I do watch a bit of Super League, like I said, and he's popping these balls, expecting people to be there, and the players are just kind of looking around like, oh shit, we're supposed to be running onto that.
With the Roosters,
exactly. So many native Canadians on that side, but yeah, like with the Roosters, you've got Teddy always hunting for an offload. He's going to get those balls, and he's going to make some breaks without a doubt.
100%. There's also rumours this week, mate, that the Canterbury Bulldogs are targeting Sonny Bill Williams for a shock comeback to the NRL from next year, more than 12 years after he walked out on the club. Now, that's a really interesting story because there was so much acrimony when Sonny obviously left for rugby union. There were people burning effigies of Sonny Bill Williams at the time. Can you see this happening full circle? Like, walking back to the club that he spurned all those years ago?
In a way, I kind of hope he does, just because even now on social media, I've had people like blowing up Deluxe about Sonny coming back because, he's just in it for the money. He's got no honour because of the Bulldogs thing. It's just like, he was 23 and he'd signed a contract for, I think he was pressured into it at the time, and there's a few things behind the scenes that not a lot of people are aware of. And
at gunpoint, or what did the pressure take the form of?
Yeah, I think they held his family hostage.
Okay.
But it was one of those things where I think he was quite put upon. He was very immature, in your early 20s. And
it's a long time ago, though, isn't it?
It's a very...
What's the statute of limitations here on your anger?
Yeah, it was 2008. It's just like, fuck.
Geez,
yeah.
I was a young man then.
A young, less cynical man. And,
I didn't have a wrinkled penis.
Yes, you did. We're born with them that way, mate.
You remember those maple syrup parties? Burn that footage.
But, Yeah, like I can't get over it. It still comes up, and you're just like, fuck, mate, get over it. It's like people still going on about the Kennedy assassination. It's just, I mean, come on, move on.
Well, here's the thing. Will this be the ultimate healer for those people who have held on to that
I
grievance?
hope so. That is why I'm hoping it happens. Is finally, will they shut the fuck up about?
Okay, so it's not about the healing. You just want them to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I just want them to say, oh, like, I've had a few back and forths with people about this, and you're just like, they're like, oh, nobody's gonna like. He'll only ever be known for walking out of the Bulldogs. I'm like, pretty sure he's known mostly by most people around the world as a 2-time World Cup winning All Black. But hey, sure, that Bulldogs thing really rates for most people.
That's right. And at the Chloe Hotel, he's known for. Welcome back to the voluntary tackle. Now, Brad Fittler, Xander, sometimes heralded as a unique individual. He has ideas that the collective don't normally have. I think he was one of the first guys to campaign to have all those kind of electronics included in the state of origin jerseys, all kind of tracking devices in all the players' underwear. Really? I think he helped pioneer a lot of that stuff. Obviously, he has them walking rolling around in the chlorophyll of the grass down at Coogee on the oval there.
Bare feet, yeah.
And look, the results speak for themselves. 2 straight series wins. So he's obviously a trendsetter. But I feel like he may have gone a bridge too far this week, Xander, by proposing some pretty out there merger ideas. And now I'm going to throw this out to the listeners and let this marinate with you. He wants one team to be the St. George Illawarra Dragons and the Sharks, just one giant South team. And the other one he wants is the Panthers to merge with the West's Tigers. My first question to you here, Xander, is, was Freddy completely off his chops when he suggested this? Because this is fucking absurd.
Yeah, I can tell you now. I mean, it was interesting that he would say the Panthers and Tigers, given he's a,
he's a Panthers
came
man.
through the Panther system. I prefer the idea of relocation over mergers. I think mergers are always a fraught exercise, and
it worked out well for Norths. You remember them, don't you? The ones that got arse raped by the Eagles. Big shout out Mario.
Case in point. Yeah, I'm still annoyed about the Bears. I think they should still be around. I'm not so sure about the Eagles. Anyway, it's madness. I think you're better off incentivizing clubs to relocate than trying to strip their identities and jam them together in some artificial partnership.
Well, let's play thought experiment, because that's what we are about here on TVT. If we pushed ahead with one of these mergers, I'm just going to put you on the spot here. Penrith and the West's Tigers, what would that identity look like? Give me some colours and mascots here.
So, I guess you probably have to just call them...
They're both big cats, that helps.
You probably have to call them the Greater Western Sydney Cats. Like
Geelong. Feral street cats?
You got like the Geelong Cats. You're not calling them lions or anything. You're just calling them
cats.
Cats.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's the only thing I can think of.
The Greater Western felines.
Yeah, effectively.
Let's get fucking really genus granular about this.
But, then it becomes something so fundamentally different. Like, you lose... the Panthers have quite a rich identity in history, and their own... Like, the Penrith is quite a different region to Campbelltown.
Leichhardt.
Yeah, well, Campbelltown and Leichhardt, right?
Yeah.
So even from a Western Sydney standpoint, they're quite different identities. And I think they're also... I mean, when you look at them, they're both growth areas. Like, if anything, I kind of... would like to see the Tigers move more of their games out to Campbelltown.
Yeah.
Because those are big rugby league heartlands.
Yeah, totally.
Both Penrith and they're both areas that are growing in population. And, Sydney's got 5 million people. Australia had 5 million people when rugby league sort of first became a professional sport in this country.
Yeah.
So I don't actually see the need for mergers in the same way that a lot of other people do, which is why I keep pushing this idea of actually just independently expanding.
Yeah. I'm an expansionist myself.
Yeah, I actually
I'm the Adolf Hitler of the NRL. I want to invade other territories.
That's the second time we've invoked Nazis on this episode. It's always a good sign. But yeah, I much prefer the idea of independently expanding to new regions, which, I mean, obviously the Brisbane 2 bid got a bit of a boost this week for that.
But this isn't Freddy's point of view, mate. You've put forward a very logical point of view. Brad Fittler comes from a completely different trajectory. Now, I want to get your take on
He comes from a 1990 Super League trajectory.
Pretty much. St. George Illawarra and the Sharks. How would that look in terms of branding?
Yeah.
How do you merge a dragon and a shark?
What you're going with sky blue? I mean, they kind of then look like an off-brand Roosters ripoff because you got sky blue, red, and white, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Could it be a dragon but just had a really good, I don't know, freestyle swimming stroke or something? I mean, how do you do that? How do you create the emblem?
maybe it's a seahorse.
Maybe it's a dragon with a hint of Thorpe. Maybe it needs a little bit of that.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, what's traditionally happened though in these mergers is that one moniker gets subsumed. The Magpies don't. They get the odd nod on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And
And the
obviously
Steelers got fucked over too.
the Steelers.
They're the stronger of the two
you know,
now.
they had stripy socks to honour them.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was it.
They had the Canberra Raiders sleeves to honour them. That's all they had. Here's another little weird quirk in this, and it can't be missed. Both of these ideas involve merging teams that have already merged, Xander. Is it possible to merge twice? I mean, what happens to the Steelers when they've already lost their identity with the Dragons and then they get folded into the fucking Sharks? I feel like Freddy's gone too far here.
Yeah, it's a little bit like suggesting Souths merge with the Roosters. I mean, you're not going to bring together a...
Let's bring the Croats and the Serbians together to live in constant harmony.
Yeah, I mean, these are crosstown rivals. You're going to piss off. You're going to alienate. You're probably going to destroy both support bases in one foul swoop.
Well, I wouldn't like to be at that HQ. I can tell you that. It'd be a fucking Black Lives Matter protest.
You would be better off, fundamentally, you would be better off scrapping all the Sydney teams.
Oh, here we go. This sounds Freddy-esque.
Like this honestly, to me, I would, like, if I were a fan of one of those clubs, I would be more comfortable with them just wiping out every Sydney team and just splitting us up into 4 new identities: East, West, North, and South. And
geez, that really is reinventing the wheel.
you know what I mean, though, right? Like, I mean, it would be more palatable for me as a Roosters fan to just have a new team altogether than have to merge with Souths.
Oh, okay. If you're presenting
Putting
that
it that way,
scenario,
yeah.
Of course, we can't merge with the enemy. That would be silly.
So we would have an eastern side that would take into account basically Balmain, for example, like the old Bears territory, because they're a coastal part of the north, and then you would have the northern part would be, that you'd split it up geographically into where different catchments were.
Oh, right. So this is just of Sydney, right? You're not talking about Newcastle here.
No,
Central Coast.
So Newcastle, obviously,
Yeah.
still its own thing. But I mean, I'm just putting it out there as a kind of harebrained scheme.
Well, I got to say, I think you've out Freddy.
But if we're talking crazy ideas, if I'm a fan of those two clubs, I would rather everyone suffer and we all have to reinvent the wheel and come at this with fresh eyes. And then you would just have, Western Sydney would just be one massive side, and South Sydney would be, wouldn't be the Rabbitohs anymore. It would be St George. And it would be Cronulla, and it would be South Sydney all in one team.
I've got to tell you something. I don't want that.
and likewise, Parramatta would be, it wouldn't be Parramatta. It would be all the combination of Parramatta, the old Magpies, and the Panthers. I mean, you wouldn't want to do it. It doesn't make sense to do it because you just kill all the support in the
You've
the
just
city.
obliterated the NRL.
But if I'm a fan of St George or the Sharks or the Panthers or West Tigers, I would rather see that than my team subsumed into a crosstown rival.
It just is a nonsensical merger. It's like having, I don't know, Souths merge with Israel. We've got Media Watch Mario Madness. Mate, we're going to kick off this Media Watch Mario Madness segment by asking you about your beloved Eels. Now, the Penrith Panthers...
Beg your pardon? Bite your tongue?
Beloved Eels.
I meant Eagles. Eagles. I thought I'd start off the segment by attributing falsely your love for clubs you hate. I thought I'd start like that. No, your beloved
That
Eagles,
wasn't
mate.
boiling enough.
It's my speech impediment. Don't hold that against me. I have to say the Panthers played beautifully, but the bigger question for me is this: where the fuck was Cade Cust? Was he dropped for Dylan the douchebag Walker, or was he injured? What's going on there?
He was dropped, and then Des, the piece of crap, then had the hide to imply for a moment there that Cust was injured, which is bullshit. He was not injured. because he was dropped the same day that he'd come out, done an interview saying, yeah, I'm really hoping I keep my spot in the team, even if it's on the bench, I just want to contribute, words to that effect. And then 5 minutes later, hey, guess what? You're the best, you're like our best player in the team at the moment. You're dropped.
This is what's strange for me. Okay, Dylan Walker comes back. He has been the incumbent 6. I disagree with him being there, but, that's by the by. But he didn't even make the bench. They had Lachlan Croker off the bench. Did he offend someone over there at Brookvale?
Look, obviously you've got to have a famous surname, or you've got to be willing to bash people of the opposite gender. It's the only way you're going to get picked. You've got to have some sort of an in. And when you're up against 2 people that have those 2 things in their favour, you're always going to lose out, it seems.
Brendan the Brave, mate, or Brendan the Light, as I now call him. I'm just wondering, is he the lightest rugby league player that's potentially ever played the game? Because at the moment, I've clocked him at about 38 kilos. I've actually seen people with advanced anorexia weigh in with a little bit more muscle mass than poor old Brendan the Light. What's your opinion there, mate? How's he going at fullback?
Look, I mean, he does okay. He does better than Ruben Garrick does there. So I'm very concerned that Des might make the wrong decision again and decide, I know what will fix all our problems. Let's put Ruben Garrick back to fullback, who was absolutely atrocious there, whereas Brendan the Brave has at least, performed his duties to the best of his ability, whereas I just can't say that of Garrick. The problem is Des has been making these shocking decisions for well over a year now. He came back to us at the start of last year with much fanfare, and he did what he has shown is he's very good at getting blood out of a stone. He's got a bunch of players there that, apparently weren't first grade standard, and he's taken people like Ruben Garrick and Moses Sully and turned them into proper first graders, and that's wonderful. The problem is what he completely lacks is the ability to recognise quality in his own club. And as I said, I think it was on the show last year or at some point where I was complaining about the fact that he dropped Cade Cuss when he was clearly our best option at number 6. And then what happens this year? About the same time, he does it again after having left Cade on the benches, just on the sidelines watching Croker and Walker suck. And then no matter how much they suck, he still didn't pick Cuss until Walker got injured.
Do you think
it's just we're beating Des Hasler over the head with the inevitable, and he just refuses to pay attention to the inevitable? And it's not just Cade Cuss. That's the thing. Jorge Tafua, love him. He's an absolute top bloke, but he hasn't been a good player since round 20 of 2014. He's been absolutely terrible since then, and he's not getting any better, and he somehow still keeps getting picked. And he's, in fact, has been signed again since then. And I just don't know what to say about that fact that we're wanting someone who's basically a reserve-grade quality player, and we're putting him down as this Manly legend because he's going to rack up 250 games because Des will never drop him.
Do you think, Mario, there may be something untoward behind the scenes that we're not aware of? Did Cust maybe make a pass at Hasler's wife? I mean, what do you attribute this strange decision-making to?
It's all it can be, because at this stage, Brad Parker, for example, he started to improve, but he's never going to be a world beater. Now, I understand that Turbo Jr. and Hopper Jr. are both young, and we don't want to throw them into a losing side and have them get injured and blah, blah, blah. But when there's Charlie Staines of the world out there and these other kids like Avarillo and these young guys just walking in and gunning it for their clubs, then why on earth can't we do the same thing with ours? I understand that perhaps Parker and perhaps Tafua were the better options, as Des saw it. But when they're going as badly as they were last night, and make no mistake, they were atrocious. Brad Parker's done us a favour by getting injured. I'm not celebrating an injury, etc. But he's done us a favour by forcing Des's hand to make a decision. I'm just worried again it'll be the wrong decision. But he shouldn't have been there, because the only thing Brad Parker had going for him was one-on-one defence, and the fact is he was out of position so much that he was forcing Tafua out of position, and that's why tries just kept getting scored down that side last night. And by the time we arrested the problem, it was too late. We were down by so much.
Mate, what should the punishment be for Des Hasler? It sounds like you're quite worked up. You sound like a very angry, disgruntled Eagles fan tonight. I'm wondering what should happen to Des Hasler. Yeah, I heard you were on the Terps last night, actually, and you're breaking glasses around the house and glassing yourself, which is the better way to go about it.
I do genuinely have multiple Band-Aids on my hands right now, so, there may be some truth to that story. I don't know the answer. That's my problem. I don't know the answer. The answer is that Des can't select the team. We need someone else to do it. I don't know who else, if anyone else there is better, because the next option there is John Cartwright. For all I know, he's involved in that and making those terrible decisions or passing on information to Des that this guy just killed it at training. Select him. I don't know what it is because I'm not there. But when literally even the utter morons on Facebook, most of whom genuinely are complete morons in the Manly Facebook page, when even they are all like, what the hell, Des? When are you going to drop Tafua? When are you going to drop Parker? When are you going to get rid of Croker and Walker? They can all see it, and they're morons. So if they can all see it and they're all right, clearly that everybody knows it, why can't Des see it? So what we need is a Mary McGregor situation. We need to get Shane Flanagan away from the Dragons and have him selecting the team, because ever since McGregor has lost their duties of selecting the team, suddenly the selections at the Dragons have gotten better and their performances have gotten better. Maybe Mary is a perfectly good coach of men, just not a good selector of talent. And that seems to be the case with Des Hasler.
See where you're coming from. You need a Trent Barrett type, I think, over at Brookvale. Xander, you had something to say to Mario?
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, mate, over the past few weeks and probably years, you have made the odd comment about forward passes and teams some seemingly intentionally making them, and there being a bit of an issue with games being lost on forward passes. I think there was a game against the Eels that was, marginally controversial a few weeks back. We have come up with a solution we think you'll quite enjoy and appreciate. And we're willing to take it all the way to the NRL head office. And that is, we're going to change the rule from the ball can't be passed out of the hands forward to the ball can be passed forward, it's just the player has to be onside. What do you think of that?
You know what? That's a better idea than Ricky Stewart's suggestion, which wasn't it one forward pass per set or one per match? Or
Gridiron pass match.
You get one forward pass a set, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this idea, except I feel like the team that would benefit most would be the teams with the best dummy halves. So right now, that's definitely not Manly. we're the opposite of a team with a good dummy half.
Letting go of Appy Carousel will forever haunt you, I think, mate.
I don't know if you guys have seen, but Manly are putting in a request to the NRL to have Manassi Fainu released to play again from the start of next year because his court case has been, delayed due to COVID. So they're saying it's unfair. It should have been, sorted out by now because they're assuming he's just going to get cleared of, stabbing somebody.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. It would, to have an alleged stabber, a dummy half, would probably be a bit more electrifying than what you've got there at the moment. I wanted to talk briefly to Murray about Sonny Bill Williams. He is the human headline. Rumours that SBW might actually be sticking around in Australia beyond 2020. There's reports today. I want to get your opinion on this. Should Sonny Bill Williams stick around and play for a club in the next couple of years? Has he still got it in him?
It's too early to say. We genuinely don't know. I mean, his half-assed efforts in Toronto, I honestly don't think they tell us anything. But the fact is he was a consummate professional when he was at the Roosters and the Bulldogs before in terms of his preparation for games and stuff. So you would assume that he's going to have 2 weeks of quarantine to prepare for these last 4 games plus finals of the season. He's going to be absolutely putting in everything he's got. And he's only being expected to play 20-minute stints for you guys. I think he could do very well in that role. It's just all up in the air as to whether his body and his heart are up to it still at that age. But if a piece of crap like Cam Smith can still be playing well at that age, then why the hell not Sonny Bill?
Mate, I can answer that one for you. It's because Cam Smith doesn't actually make tackles. He just kind of hangs around players who do tackle.
That is true. He is the third man in on almost every tackle. He's basically the Sam Thaiday of hookers.
Yeah, he's the third elbow into the windpipe, generally speaking.
Yeah, on the third knee to the back of someone's leg.
Exactly. On Cameron Smith, though, mate, he hurt his shoulder today. It looks like your Cameron Smith voodoo doll is finally working, mate. Thing is, I thought you said you were sticking all the pins in his penis, not his shoulder.
Yeah, well, I don't want him to breed, so you can't really blame me for that. The last thing we want is Cameron Smith Jr. playing NRL in 20 years.
He's got 2 kids. I think you're a little bit late to the party on that one.
Yeah, but maybe they're crap, and we don't want him to have the next one that might be good.
But did you just throw that doll out of the window, thinking maybe it just doesn't work, and it just landed on its shoulder finally, and perhaps you did the trick by doing that? Can you go pick it up and throw it out again?
Well, the problem is I live on the first. I've only got a single-story house, so I was up on the roof when I threw it today, so that might have made the difference.
See, I'm not intimately familiar with the black arts, but I would have thought that sticking needles in his penis, I didn't know that would have led to erectile dysfunction. I thought that might have made his penis drop off. I know that's a nuance, but what were you hoping to achieve by the pins in the penis?
Well, you see, I got some very expert advice from an acupuncturist who told me all the right spots to get it. So you put it in the right spot in the penis, and it shoots nerves right up your shoulder and into your head, and everything goes through the penis.
That would have been an unnerving question for your poor old acupuncturist, that's for sure.
I think that
what seems to be the problem? Well,
I think that should be the motto of the show. Everything goes through the penis.
I know. Certainly our scripts for this show does. It comes out the anus most of the time. Mate, I want to finish on hopefully it was a positive note. Indigenous round. How have you seen that so far? Obviously, this is one of the jewels in the crown for the NRL. They generally execute this one pretty well. I've quite enjoyed it. How have you seen it?
I think the Canberra Raiders should be fined a significant amount of money. In my opinion, it's South Park, how they've got that character called Token Black.
In South Park?
Oh, yeah.
I thought you said Souths.
So basically that jersey is the Token Black of the Indigenous jerseys, when everyone else made such great efforts.
Yeah.
Some better than others, but they've put a lot of thought and effort and emotion into it in a lot of cases. And the Canberra Raiders just took a big fat dump on the Indigenous jerseys and smeared them around the sleeves and said, "Here you go, here's a design for you."
Do you know what it reminds me of, Mario? You know, when you've got the big ads and at the very bottom it says, gamble responsibly for a sporting company. I feel like they've done that approach to the Indigenous round. It's like you blink and you miss it. Their core branding seems to be the most important thing. But apart from the Canberra Raiders jersey, mate, has it been positive for you?
Oh, yeah. Look, absolutely. I mean, sporting results have absolutely sucked this round because the 76ers lost and the Manly lost, so fuck sport. But in terms of the actual jerseys, I think it's been a really good initiative. I've seen less racism online than I expected from this sort of stuff. I expected a lot more.
You didn't check Mark Latham's. You didn't check Mark Latham's account, then I take it.
I don't have him blocked, but I do have him muted, so that is why.
Wise.
Sound advice. No, I agree with you, Mario. It's great to see all the players taking to the concept and supporting the round. And a big shout out to Sean Keppie for blacking up and running out as Arthur Beetson last match. Really getting into the spirit. That has been.
I don't know if you guys saw, but in the basketball that just started this week on Friday it started. The NBA started back up, and every single team has they've all been taking a knee they've all been kneeling during the anthem, and all completely united behind Black Lives Matter. And the NBA itself, every club, all the players have gotten together to agree on messages that they have on their shoes, on their back, on their jerseys, and that sort of stuff. And it's absolutely glorious just watching the triggering in the comments on Facebook in the NBA pages. Because at the best of times, you'll see these absolute geniuses, whinging and whining about the 76ers doing anything positive towards Black Lives Matters, and then usually it's 50 people shouting them down as, fuck off, racist, bigot, scum. But, yeah, it's been even more so this round. You see anyone that says anything and they're getting shot the hell down. So, frankly, they say that we're not supposed to, you're not supposed to insult the bloody white supremacists because that just makes them win. Nah, fuck that. They're Nazi scum and they're getting told that and they're shutting the fuck up, and I like it.
Who says don't insult a Nazi? That sounds like bad advice.
That's the popular thing these days is, you're letting them win, but when you
don't talk down to the Nazi morons. Yeah, I've seen that too. Actually, it's funnily enough, that's kind of the point that South Park made, is that by belittling them, you just make them dig in, which psychologically is true, but still, they're stupid.
Yeah, the problem is, to me, that being this way, that way inclined has sort of become cool in America, or at least less of a taboo. So even though, they might get insulted by the slight majority of people, there's so many people defending them that they feel justified in those thoughts. Whereas, 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. And I think it needs to get back to the stage where anyone says anything pro-Nazi, that everybody shouts them down so much that they don't feel comfortable saying it. And then in time, they don't feel comfortable thinking it.
You know, it's just amazing our strike rate of how many of our segments end with a sort of critique of Nazism. It's amazing. Godwin's Law, Xander, as we know. Media Watch Mario, mate, thank you very much for joining us. We hope your abduction of Des Hasler's kids goes smoothly next week. Thank you for joining the Voluntary Tackle.
And I just need to finish by saying, bust the cast.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you very much, Voluntary Tacklers, for listening for another week. A big shout out to our sister podcasts, Sports Best Friends and The Front Office. I say sisters, we're more of an illegitimate cousin of those shows, to be honest. Just hanging around their family homes, hoping to be accepted. Even though deep down we know we're not blood relatives and will never be loved as much. Anyway, until next time, just Google the name Willie Mason. We've noticed the second result is Willie Mason teeth. Just something to think about. Catch you next show. That's right, Voluntary Tacklers. We're not going anywhere just yet because something we haven't done in quite a while is the Voluntary Tackle Mascot War. Xander, I have just scribbled down manically on a piece of paper who I think my team is. Have you already organised yours?
I'll have it ready by the time we count to 3, I'm sure.
Okay, well, that's right now, mate. So fucking hop to it because we're not very organised here on the show. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. What's yours?
Hoods.
Hoods?
The Nottingham Hoods from the English Basketball League.
Okay, excellent. I have so many questions because that just drew a blank face. Mine is the Newcastle Manshakes. We're talking Manshakes, obviously. Big shout out to Adam McDougall.
Just continuing with our theme of me picking a real team and you just making one the fuck up.
Of course, mate. This is what the mascot war is all about. So tell me about the Hoods because I don't know anything about them. Is it anything to do with Robin Hood?
Well, they're from Nottingham, so I'm assuming that it's a Robin Hood reference. The problem is
an unusual coincidence.
The problem is I'm not sure if it's a reference to Robin Hood or if it's just like a hoodie.
Well, that'll be more of a letdown if it's just a fucking hoodie, wouldn't it? So I assume that your mascot, its big weapon would be stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. I don't know how that services you in a mascot war, but we'll find out because you're going to take on what is effectively a man-sized man-shake. Okay, so I've got legs and arms, but my body is made of Adam McDougall's really spurious ingrediented man-shake, which as we already said, is full of bone broth, eye of newt, and possibly anabolic steroids. How would a Robin Hood type character take that down?
Probably with an arrow to the face.